Alright, hello. My name's Levi, and today I'm going to be taking you guys through 10 classic books that I would like to read in the near future. This is actually my third time recording this video, so hopefully this time comes together well. The first time my mic wasn't working, the second time my head was like all the way out of the shot. So hopefully I look okay in the frame and this mic is working, because this has been frustrating. I should also say a couple things before we get into the books. One, this is still a relatively new channel, so if you guys could show me some support on this video in whichever way you deem necessary, I would greatly appreciate it. It's still, like I said, a small channel, so it goes a long way. I also should say that this list is in no particular order. In fact, let me grab the list one sec. It's really just in order of smallest to largest, because that's how you stack books. And if you stack them any other way, you're psychotic. This is also by no means an exhaustive list. It's just books that I found on my shelf that I'm like, hey, I want to read that soon. I've heard good things about it. I know a little bit about it. And it's one that I would like to get to in the near future, like I said. Lastly, I think it's a pretty diverse list. I tried to cover as many bases as I kind of could. So hopefully there's something in here for you as well. So without further ado, let's just get into the books. Starting off at number 1, we have Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. I believe this is Ray Bradbury's most popular novel. I think he has some other works that are very well known, but I think this is his biggest. Could be wrong, let me know. This is a novel set in a dystopian world where people are tasked with burning books. From what I understand, I think there's people who are specifically employed to do a job of burning books. And our main character, I believe, is a fireman, which is what that job is. And it's kind of about his realization that maybe what he's doing isn't necessarily right. So it seems like this book plays with themes of things like censorship and morality, and it's overall a really short read, so I think it'd be a great book for not only me to read, but for you to read as well, especially if you're interested in dystopian literature or censorship. Number 2 is an author I've read before. I've read one of his works very early on in my journey with re-exploring my love for reading, and that is Kurt Vonnegut. And here I have Slaughterhouse-Five on the list. Hopefully these are in frame well. I need to keep that in mind. We'll put it about there. But this is Slaughterhouse-Five. It's a great anti-war novel from what I understand. It takes place in the fire bombings of Dresden, Germany, I believe. And there's probably some sci-fi elements in there and some like absurdism type stuff, which I think Vonnegut's known for. I've read, like I said, Cat's Cradle previously, but I don't think I really appreciated it too well. Not to say that I didn't enjoy it. It was just that I think I was very focused on the plot and getting through the book, that there may have been some things that went over my head. I was, like I said, still early on in my reading journey. I think that at that point I was still caught up in trying to read as many books as I could, as opposed to really appreciating and understanding the books that I was reading, which I think is a very big distinction that is not always easy to make. I know that a lot of his other works are very praised, so if any of these books, this one included, you have either an alternative starting point for this author, or you've read the book, or you just want to say something in general, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys and just hear your opinions on any of these works or anything in general. Number 3 is a bit foreign to me, and I mean literally foreign. It's a foray into a type of literature that I have absolutely no experience in, and I'm just overall interested in exploring based on what I've heard from other people. And this is one of 2 examples in this list of this, I don't want to say genre, but I guess this type of literature. I don't really know how to classify it exactly, but that is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I probably butchered that name. I'm sorry if I did. I tried my best to pronounce it, even looked up pronunciation, so hopefully I got it right, but hopefully there's a decent chance I didn't, because I am not by any means fluent or proficient in pronouncing Russian. And yeah, this is a endeavor into Russian literature. It's something that I think is very foreign to me as a reader. I've read a lot of American literature, I've read a lot of British literature, but I really haven't read much Russian literature. And I think that it's always very renowned, and it's something that I would like to explore more. I think in general I would like to explore more different like translated works. I should also note that this particular copy is the translation by Constance Garnett, and I probably won't end up reading this translation itself. I've heard mixed reviews about this translation, and I bought this before I realized how much a translator can make or break translated work like this. So I'll probably end up getting one of the more popular translations, one of the more readable translations, and reading that one, but this is the copy I had on my shelf, so this is the one we're talking about. I don't know if this is the place to start, or if I should start with the brothers Karamazov, because I know they're both very well-known novels, but this is the one I have, so this is what we were talking about today. So Crime and Punishment, as the title suggests, is about the main protagonist, whose name is Raskolnikov, and he commits a crime. I believe it's a murder. I don't entirely know, but that's what I think. And it's about him dealing with the repercussions, the punishment that comes with them, as well as like just dealing with the consequences. It sounds like a very moral heavy book and sounds like a very interesting read. I think that this book is considered pretty heavy, and I like heavy literature, so this is one that's top of my list. Another person that I believe is considered not the easiest person to read, but one that I want to dip my toes into nonetheless, that sounded a bit weird, is Charles Dickens. And the starting place that I chose here was A Tale of Two Cities. I've read online that this is a good starting place for Charles Dickens. I think I've also heard that A Christmas Carol is also good, but I think this is where I wanted to start. I think I'm not crazy about seasonal stories when it's out of season. Maybe I'd read A Christmas Carol during Christmas time, but currently it's March, so I'm not going to pick that book up in hopes to read it yet. So that's how we found ourselves with A Tale of Two Cities. This book, as far as I can tell, based on the front little picture there, is about the French Revolution, which is a very interesting period of history that every time it came up in my classes I always enjoyed hearing about, but I don't know enough about. And Dickens as a writer in general is someone that I think is very renowned, as, to be honest, all these people on this list are, but nonetheless one that I'm very unfamiliar with. So this is a work that I'm very excited to get to. The next work on this list, I won't lie, is a little bit of a cheat because I've already listened to the first couple of chapters of this on a run with my fiance, and that is Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. Now, this is a very popular one on the reading space, YouTube reading space, I should say. I've heard a lot of people talking about this one, and even my fiance has read it, I believe, 3 times, and she's now listening to it with me on her 4th try. And she seems to be enthralled by it and couldn't necessarily tell me why, so I'm very interested to dive into it myself. From what I understand about the story so far, and in general, this is about a girl named Esther Greenwood, and she goes to New York City and she has some form of like job there. It seems a little weird from what I've read so far, but she has some responsibility there. And it's about her slow descent into madness, depression, something like that. I think it deals a lot with mental health and just devolving into madness, which I think when written well is very interesting to read. And based on the reviews of this book, I imagine this one is one that does it well. I also love an unreliable narrator, and I imagine if we're told this story from her point of view, she may not have the best grasp on what's actually going on around her sometimes, which I think can make a story super fun to read. Because you can kind of like read it multiple times and be like, wait, what is actually happening here? You don't fully get all the context from the words in the book itself. It's like you have to form ideas yourself, which I always find very rewarding. I've also heard that this book is somewhat biographical or autobiographical about Sylvia Plath. I know it's fiction, but I think some of the events in the book are inspired by events that happened in her life from what I read online. So that also just makes it really interesting. And very excited to continue reading this one. This is the only one on the list, I promise, that I've already picked up and read a little bit of. So on to the next. Our next is another foray into the world of Russian literature, and it's the other big author in that space, I'd say, at least the other big one that I hear about, and that is Leo Tolstoy. But it's not the normal starting point, I would imagine, for Tolstoy, but it's The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which is a short story. I guess it would be considered more of like a novella about a man who is dying or is maybe dealing with grief or his own death. I don't really know. I think it deals with themes of mortality. Yeah, I've just heard it's a really great short story. It's only about 60 pages, and I was going to use this as my starting place for Tolstoy. I know Tolstoy has some other very well-known works like War and Peace and Anna Karenina, and I want to get to those too, but due to sheer size, those are a little bit daunting. I think this would be a good starting spot for me. If you think otherwise, let me know down below. But Tolstoy, nonetheless, is an author that I want to explore in general, and I thought this would be my diving board, so to speak. Another darling of the online book YouTube space is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. So this is a novel about a character called Dorian Gray, I believe. I'm assuming based on the title, hopefully I'm not wrong, who is this supposedly beautiful and youthful young man who sells his soul to keep his beauty and youth throughout the course of his life. But there's also this portrait that kind of ages as he would have if he hadn't, which sounds like a very interesting idea. And it's just a novel that's supposed to explore like the idea of the fleetingness of beauty and of youth in general. And I think that's a really interesting idea to explore. It's something that I think can definitely touch you very personally, those type of themes, especially as you grow older. And that's the reason this one's on the list. I've also heard a lot of great things from people about this. And overall, it just seems like a really interesting premise for a story. So, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This next one is a work that, to be honest, I should have already read. It's something that is very fundamental to a lot of stories that I love, and it's something that I really should have already gotten to, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I believe this is considered a fundamental work of science fiction as well as maybe horror. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, it is a story of a scientist or an experiment gone wrong and the consequences and morality of that, from what I understand. It's kind of like a horror novel. It's kind of spooky. There's some monster creation. I mean, who hasn't heard about the story of Frankenstein? Let's be honest. But it's one that I want to get to nonetheless. I think that this is a fundamental piece of work of literature that everyone should probably read at some point, especially if they like those type of books. I also know that there is a couple versions of Frankenstein. I think Mary Shelley wrote a version that is the most popular published version, and then there's also an 1818 text. I don't know which one this is or which one I should read, but I've heard that the one she wrote when she was younger was much more gruesome. That's about all I know. So if you guys know anything about that, let me know. This next work is an author that I have read before, and I'm not sure if this one or another one is the best starting point for me, but it's the one I chose, and that is John Steinbeck's East of Eden. I swear everyone who's ever read this book can do nothing but rant about it or tell me how great it is. Also, I just love these editions with like this etching drawings and these simple covers. And whatever this page style is, can you guys see that? Where you have like these different length pages. I love this design when it comes to books. It makes it just so appealing to flip through the pages. You guys know what that's called? I really don't know much about the plot of East of Eden though. Like I said, I have read Steinbeck before. I read Of Mice and Men, and my mom's favorite novel is Grapes of Wrath, so it seems like one that could probably have a very personal connection to me and my life. And I read the little synopsis on the inside, and it seems to be about two families in Northern California and kind of the feud they go through over time, which I love family drama and those type of things if done well. It kind of reminds me of, which I know this book predates, but I don't know if you've ever seen the TV show The Hatsfields and the McCoys. It's about two families like that are warring, essentially, or the blood feud that they have, and I imagine that's what this novel is kind of like. Maybe a little bit of like Christianity allegories in there too, because it is called East of Eden, and I noticed that it had some talks about the fall of Adam and Eve and the poisonous rivalry of Cain and Abel, so maybe it's kind of loosely based on some stuff like that, which sounds interesting as well. But East of Eden, a book that is one of the bigger books on this list, a little bit more intimidating, but I think will be an enjoyable read nonetheless. Now for this last work, I gotta put my back into it. I have a little preamble that I want to say before I tell you about this work, or before I even pick it up, because like I said, it is heavy to pick up. But I think there's some works of literature that are just fundamental to how we understand literature today. I think you can look at things like the Bible in this case, not even necessarily in a religious way, just in a historical way. You can look at things like Greek and Roman mythology, Greek philosophers, Roman philosophers, stuff like that. You can look at Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey. These works have influence on other works, and they have allegories and references in other books that I think is very rewarding to understand when you do understand them. So I do want to read those books so I can understand other things, other references, like I said, in these other classic books and other works in general. Now, one pillar I think I did not mention there that I think goes without saying if you really think about it, but was very fundamental to the structuring of what we know as a novel and a story and everything else, is William Shakespeare. And we got this mammoth of a complete works edition here that just has everything he ever wrote in it. And God, is it heavy. It's also beautiful. It looks like a textbook though. And I want to read, this is ambitious I know, but I want to read every play by Shakespeare. I'm not committing to the sonnets. I don't entirely know how to appreciate poetry yet. I don't dislike poetry. I've read some by Edgar Allan Poe recently. I've been working my way through a little collection of that, and I enjoy some of it, but some of it just doesn't hit for me. So I'm not going to commit to the sonnets necessarily, but I do want to read all the plays. I think Shakespeare had a huge impact on what like I said, what we know as literature today, and I think not reading him is just doing myself a disservice. And I think also his story and what he's done is just profound. So it's something that I definitely want to explore more, and that's why I have this massive ass copy. So there is our list of works. Hopefully there's something in here that's interesting to you, or maybe something that you've read before. If that's the case, let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys watching and sticking with me. If you could leave some support on the video, I'd really appreciate it. But nonetheless, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.